The air was still. William's footsteps echoed across the polished marble hallway of Camilla's secluded estate, a place few ever entered without invitation. He was there for something routine, a quiet afternoon among dusty archives, a simple task that felt almost ceremonial. But in the far corner of the study, his eyes caught a shape that didn't belong. A weathered oak chest, its brass lock tarnished with age, and etched, in faint but deliberate ink, 1995. His pulse quickened. The year his mother's voice shook the world in that BBC interview. The year everything began to unravel. He knelt, almost afraid to touch it. The lock gave way with an unsettling ease, and there, tucked beneath yellowed press clippings, lay a single cream envelope. His breath stopped. 2 letters. D.S. Written in the unmistakable, swirling hand of Diana Spencer. His vision blurred. Knees weak. Because this was no mere letter, this was a ghost from the year that changed his life forever. And as the paper trembled in his hands, one truth became clear. What he was about to read could rewrite the story of his mother's final days. And you won't believe what this discovery sets into motion. For decades, the names Charles and Camilla have been whispered with both scandal and inevitability. Their history, a story of love that defied royal convention, came at a cost. The world never forgot the fractures it left in the House of Windsor, nor the woman most deeply scarred by it. Now, in 2025, the monarchy walks a fragile tightrope. Public approval hovers uneasily. Prince Harry's searing memoir still casts long shadows. Even the grand spectacle of the coronation could not drown out the murmurs of doubt. And in the heart of this storm stands Catherine, Princess of Wales. Beloved, graceful, a figure so often measured against the ghost of Diana, and yet determined to chart her own course. But Diana's presence is inescapable. Her name, her image, her story, they linger in every public wave, every camera flash. For William, that legacy is not just history. It's a living pulse in every decision he makes. Now, with a grand public event at Westminster Abbey just days away, tensions are rising. Behind the smiles and ceremony, an undercurrent is building. And it's about to break in a way no one could have foreseen. She was only 19 when she stepped into the gilded world of Buckingham Palace. Lady Diana Spencer, shy smile, head bowed, eyes glancing up with a kind of luminous hope, became the most photographed woman on earth. But behind palace walls, the fairy tale was already cracking. Charles's heart, it seemed, had never truly been hers. The quiet shadow of Camilla Parker Bowles, his longtime confidant, and later revealed, his enduring love, haunted the marriage from the start. The world watched Diana's transformation, from timid young bride to confident humanitarian, adored by millions. And then, the unraveling. The separation. The confessions. The 1995 interview that shook the monarchy to its core. And finally, Paris, 1997. The car crash. The sirens. The grief that united Britain in stunned silence. Her image became more than memory, it became symbol, a measure by which every royal woman since would be compared. Catherine, knowingly or not, stepped into that space. Poised, elegant, warm, yet always under the gaze of Diana's ghost. Early in her royal life, small frictions with Camilla began to show. Nothing overt, but enough to seed quiet rivalries. And in the House of Windsor, quiet things have a way of echoing. March 17, 2025, Westminster Abbey. The air thick with incense, the hush of anticipation. And then, Catherine stepped into view. Navy wool coat, precise tailoring, sapphire brooch glinting in the light. An ensemble almost identical to Diana's state visit attire in 1991. Every movement was deliberate. Even the slow, graceful bow before the Abbey's altar carried a weight, a silent echo of a woman long gone, and a signal to those who understood its meaning. Charles's face faltered for a moment, his composure cracking just enough for the cameras to catch it. Beside him, Camilla's smile remained, tight, brittle, but her eyes told a different story. By nightfall, the images had consumed social media. Side-by-side comparisons of Catherine and Diana flooded every feed. The press called it the gesture heard around the world. That evening at Clarence House, the atmosphere turned heavy. Words were exchanged behind closed doors. Voices low but sharp. Camilla's patience worn thin. Charles, torn between loyalty and the optics of unity. William stayed quiet, until it mattered. His support for Catherine was absolute. And in that tension, a key was turned, to the chest holding Diana's letters, locked away since 1997. Alone in his study, Charles unfolded the first letter. The ink had faded, but the voice was unmistakable. Diana's words were laced with an eerie foresight, mentions of a young woman with steady eyes, who would one day stand beside William, loved for her grace, but feared for her quiet strength. When the second letter spoke of a bow that would speak louder than words, Charles's hand trembled. It was as if Catherine's actions had been scripted decades before. Outside palace walls, the frenzy was uncontainable. #Diana knew. #Catherine bowed. The hashtags trended across continents. Editorials painted Catherine as the living embodiment of Diana's legacy, deliberate or not. Then came the second blow. Leaving Westminster Abbey days later, Catherine adjusted her pace just enough to step ahead of Camilla, a subtle breach of royal protocol, but one that made a statement impossible to miss. Cameras flashed. The image went viral. "The walk that shook the throne," headlines declared. The tide was turning. Crowds began calling her Queen Catherine online. Charles appeared pale, withdrawn. And beside him, Camilla's smile had hardened into something else entirely, a mask holding back a storm. The palace press office went into overdrive. Phones rang through the night, aides drafting and redrafting statements that said nothing, yet tried to contain everything. But the images were already out. The debates were raging. Was Catherine a modernizing force, or a deliberate disruptor? And more dangerously, was the monarchy losing control of its own story? Privately, father and son spoke behind closed doors. Charles's tone carried the weight of the crown, but William's responses were measured, protective, unyielding. The unspoken rift between them widened by inches. Whispers spread about Camilla's private archives, the chest William had opened, and the possibility of even more letters Diana had penned in her final years. One, in particular, loomed large in the rumors, a 1996 note said to hold uncomfortable truths about the marriage and the throne. Far from the cameras, Lady Sarah McCorquodale, Diana's elder sister, had been watching the storm unfold. Her loyalty to her nephew was unwavering. And so, quietly, deliberately, she made her decision. The letter would not remain in the shadows. It would go to Catherine, and in doing so, place the weight of Diana's final warning directly into her hands. The letter was folded in thirds, the paper soft from years in hiding. Catherine read in silence, the handwriting looping and elegant, instantly recognizable. Diana's words were sharp, yet aching with care. She spoke of the loneliness that seeped into palace life, the quiet hands that guide you toward isolation, the subtle manipulations disguised as tradition. And then, the line that stopped her breath. "One day, there will be a woman who carries my name, not in blood, but in spirit. She must be stronger than I was." William found her in the study, the letter still trembling in her hands. He didn't ask what it said, he didn't need to. Instead, he made a quiet vow, almost a whisper. "I won't let them do to you what they did to her." Outside, the world was already deciding her image. Queen Catherine trended again, not as a title, but as a symbol. To many, she was Diana's unfinished reign made flesh. But within the palace walls, history is a slow, relentless tide. The question lingers, unspoken yet heavy. Will the crown bend, or will it break? And somewhere, in those endless corridors, Diana still walks.